Good evening. I'll call this budget meeting to order. Just remind all counselors to sign in. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki and the district of Sipekne'katik, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. East Hants further acknowledges the 50 African Nova Scotian communities whose 400-year history have contributed to the province's culture, history, and legacies. We are all treaty people. Next, I'd be looking for any changes or amendments to the agenda. Councillor Hebb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We talked about the rates for fire departments here a week ago and stuff. I would like to revisit that at some point. I'm not ready to discuss it tonight. I want to get some more information, but I do want to put on the agenda to be a part of the budget items. Whether just basically, yeah, for all the fire departments, yeah. It's just some issues has come up that I've thought about, and I think it's basically an overall discussion is what it would be, so.
So the plan is for Thursday to bring that information back to council?
This Thursday?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll,
But if you want to have that discussion, we have time tonight to have the discussion if you want more information brought back.
I would wait to get my information before I discuss it, really. So hopefully I'll have that by Thursday, by this Thursday, hopefully. If not, we can wait till next week, so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no one else, the agenda is approved. Next, I'd be looking for any changes to the budget meeting minutes of February 5th, 2026. Seeing none, the minutes are approved. And our first item this evening is continuation of review of draft 2026-27 business plans with the CAO. You just want to. You're on.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So councillors, the next, we started through your business plans last week. And I'm just going to take you through these first few slides that we went through last week. Just a reminder of how the document is laid out. We went through the council cost center with very few changes. We started looking at sort of the list of significant issues proposed, and a reminder that all of these on the next three, this slide and the next two, are all in your document as business plan boxes with all of the sort of how it ties back to our strategic plan. These are just significant initiatives. They are not our annual planned activities, our repeatable stuff, like, you know, the budget, for example, that takes 3 or 4 months to prepare is not a box in your business plan because we do that every year anyway. And there's a lot more detail in on each of these projects in your business plan. So I went through this slide last week. The next slide, again, has a lot of information of different projects. Quite a bit of work being done this year on your Lance wastewater systems. You'll see that throughout your budgets. That includes everything from the 214 upgrades in Elmsdale to a huge project, which is the Brookside Revitalization Project. And then currently we've got wastewater collection upgrades ongoing through Mater Street area in Lance. So lots of activity there. We have started doing several flood mitigation studies. There's 2 more in this budget. One for the brook that runs through around the mill in Elmsdale. And I don't think that body of water is actually named, so we've named it the Millbrook Flood Study. So that is what that references. And then there's also a flood mitigation study for Havenwood Drive area in Shubenacadie. Lots of projects you'll see throughout the INO section of the budget. And those are all things that have been prioritized ahead of some others with respect to, so for example, in the water system, we've got some water loss projects to make sure that we can find water losses and meter them with our district meter work. And lots of wastewater this year. So last year, we were really focused on the Shubenacadie wastewater treatment plant. This year, I would say our primary focus is on the distribution or the collection of wastewater throughout the Lance area and getting that in a sustainable way to the plant, as well as trying to mitigate some of the historic challenges we've had during storm events throughout the Poplar Drive subdivision. So we hope that some of this work will help with that. And as you'll recall, we have $6.2 million worth of funding for that Brookside Revitalization Project from the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund, and we've requested additional funding from the province for that project as well. With respect to the Parks Recreation projects you see here, there's lots going on with tourism. As council knows, you've delayed your signage program, which was in the budget last year, and we'll be doing a tourism strategy for this year. We're looking at all of our DAR work that council had a report on not too long ago. There's money in the budget for that kind of work. And then lots of things around on this slide and on the next slide around the recreation programs for this year. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the playground work. There is the playground and park development at the playground in the Belnan Avenue. That was the motion that Councillor Hebb had brought forward to have included in the budget. And then the Lakelands Regional Park development is also in this budget for the Mount Uniacke area. We have a couple of projects this year in our Parks, Rec and Culture that I'll get into a little bit further detail around sort of an idea to have a play box on wheels that we could use in the summertime to bring recreation to all of the areas of East Hants, not just ones that have gymnasiums and parks, but sort of a pilot to see if that kind of project would go well in East Hants and be well received. There's lots going on at the Sportsplex, and we actually have set aside some time on Thursday night to do a full review of the Sportsplex along with all of the operations, the projects, and really what we want to have the discussion with council is around sort of your vision for that facility, what you want to see in these budgets. I know as I'm reviewing budgets with staff, I find it very difficult to know which ones to actually include in here because I don't have a long-term vision for that facility. We've done a lot of, okay, let's hurry up and get this transitioned and get it fixed and get the major things done that need to be done, but there's lots of things that could be done that I need you to sort of weigh in on. And we've also got some work around our stormwater upgrades for the East Hants Aquatic Center, some minor alterations to the splash pad, a few things on the exterior of the building that we hope will sort of make the building a little more resilient, and then some internal building automation work for this building and based on the assessments that we've had done of the Lloyd Matheson Center. So a ton of stuff for facilities and a ton of stuff as well for planning. So when we get to the planning section, you'll notice there's lots of work in here around obviously your official community plan review. That's the big one. That's happens every 10 years. A massive amount of work and lots of community and public engagement. But at the same time, we're also doing some flood information. We're doing some Mount Uniacke servicing feasibility study, secondary planning study for Grand Lake Horn Settlement. So all kinds of things that that are going to help set you up for that 2050, 2060 vision, which sounds like a long time away, but it's really, really not. So that's the high level overview. We're going to go through each department and all the directors are here if you have any questions about the projects in their department or anything you see in the budget, What I'm going to do is take you through sort of a slide or two, I think in INO's case, probably 3 or 4, of sort of a high level. And then each one of your departments has in it a table 3, which is a reconciliation of significant budget to budget variances. So this essentially is a dollar by dollar variance table that says what was different this year from last year, where the funding is different this year from last year. And if I'll take you through sort of the high level of those, and if you have any questions specifically on the pages in the budget, we can pause and go through those questions. So the first department is the Office of the CAO. So this is my office. The total impact on the general rate for my office this year is $310,000. My department starts, it's the first, after the council budget. It starts on page 16 of your business plan document and goes till page 22. And on page 22, you can see sort of the significant variances from budget to budget. In this department, and I should say, we've got the HR report at the end of this, so I'm going to go through all the new HR dollars as I go through each department. But then we also have the HR report being presented this evening if you want it presented in detail. So in my department, we do have 2 new positions in here. One is a deputy CAO position. I had an opportunity to talk to council about my priorities as far as the organization goes. And there's an awful lot that's being downloaded from the province that is needed to be done for this organization that I just don't have the capacity to do. So I have asked council to put a deputy CAO position in my office, and that person would become another member of the director team, and they would cover me off when I'm gone and be my official second in command. There's also a new position in here that will report through to my department, but will be shared between myself and Jesse for solid waste. The request in the budget from the solid waste department was for a solid waste educator, a full-time position, which I didn't think would necessarily be a full-time position, but throughout the organization, there's also a lack of engagement and consultation expertise. So from a shared services point of view, this person would report through our communications folks and support a lot of those programs and initiatives that we currently don't do a great job right now on educating people on, or actually educating them on a topic. So we have a lot of things to do with our water utility, some on our wastewater, but primarily we're talking about, solid waste, roads programs, municipal brand awareness. So someone who can go to parades and go to public community fairs, that type of thing, and actually promote the municipality and all the different programs that we have, not just solid waste, but anything for the community. We also have an increase in here for some training. So this is where the training budget is for the entire organization. An extra $6,800, and we're bringing in $10,000 from the training reserve that's unspent money. So all of the money in our organization for training is managed centrally, except the money that is needed for people to do their jobs from a regulation perspective. So, for example, Alana has money in her budget to train lifeguards to be lifeguards, to make sure that they're recertified, because that money has to be available for the department, and she can't rely on a global budget to make sure that that money is not spent. We also have our biannual employee engagement survey coming up in this fiscal. So there's a budget of $9,000. That happens every 2 years. And council has approved in principle to be increased in this budget, $10,000 for Kids Action, $20,000 for the Family Resource Center, and $21,000 in general government grants. So although Joe was here presenting the other night, and it's managed by Alana's department. The general government grant expenses are come out of my budget. This year, we're going to be focusing on the implementation of the Equitable East Hants Plan. We're going to be doing more municipal education and engagement, and we're going to be focused on the Fire Service Provincial Governance Review. So I can tell you that that process is not going to be without its challenges. I've sat through probably 6 hours of engagement on it in the past week and a half. 2 days last week, plus some more today. There's going to be a lot of energy and effort required to see us through that process. So although it's not coming with a cost, it comes with a cost, and that's time and energy from my department. We do have our manager of public safety who's engaged with that process, as well as our director of corporate services, and primarily from an EMO lens for the manager of public safety. And we just need to make sure that we can get us and our fire departments through that process in a good manner. So if you look at page 22 of your document, the table for my department, each of these tables will show you sort of the impact of salary increments for this year. So those would be where somebody is not at the top of their scale, and based on their performance is getting a salary increment. It also has any increase in benefits, and it has new positions. So that's generally the first row of a salary and benefits that you're going to see. The next line you're going to see in each of these tables is the amount of money that came out of the market review dollars that you set aside for last year and were assigned to this department. So when we budget for our market review, we don't do it based on departments or based on a percentage. We do it based on a dollar value that is in the finance department. And then once we do the market review, we take those dollars and assign them to different areas of the municipality of the wage budget. So that second line in every one of these tables is the amount from the 2025-2026 operating budget that was assigned to that department. A little bit confusing, but it works out well that way. We can put in a lump sum and then not have expectations based on where we've budgeted the dollars. The other big thing in here again was the increase in grants. And then as far as your reserves go, there's a decrease in this overall department of money being transferred in from reserves, primarily because we've done the projects that they were coming in last year for. So that's the office of the CAO. On to corporate services. So this starts on page 23 and goes to page 41 of your document. So in corporate services, we have a couple of slides here. Your economic and business development has a new, I guess it's not so new anymore, but an updated strategic plan for economic and business development. Part of their services this year, again, not going to cost a lot of money, but will cost a lot of time and energy. They're hoping to be able to reach more businesses through actually going to the business regardless of where they are in the municipality. So having availability for our business development officer for people to meet with in different areas of the municipality as part of the plan. And then we have our engagement sessions for the public transit. Up to this point, corporate services has been managing that, and I believe council put in 6 or 9 public engagement sessions. So again, there are dollars associated with that, but there's also a significant amount of time associated with that. Under protective services, if council recalls, and the public may recall, that there is legislation put in by the province that has basically said you shall join a REMO, a Regional Emergency Management organization. And council has reached out to Colchester, Truro, and Stewiacke to see if we can join their REMO. Again, Not sure how much money that's going to cost this year, but it will be a lot of energy and effort to get that coordinated. And as well, on our own side, we need to update our operational plan for EMO, which is something we do on a regular basis. And we also need to look at our business continuity planning, and our manager of public safety has that as one of his major plans for this year. On the community outreach piece for protective services, we ran some really successful seniors events this past year. That was one of council's mandates when senior safety closed their doors, and we hired the manager of public safety. So we will be holding those again this coming year. I think they were really well attended and lots of great feedback from the seniors. And then we have some dollars in the budget to support other organizations that provide public safety to our residents, and to join with those organizations to make sure that we can put on some events to support those folks. But also, we have sort of that power to get the word out on the street. So once we become involved in something, it sort of adds a level of community interest. And there's some dollars in there to make sure we can put those events on without any issues. And then on the real estate side, we do have some work being done on the former Elmsdale school site redevelopment. Amy's working on that. Council has approved dollars in this budget to have a full-time position work through all of the easements and encroachments. And then there's also some money in this budget for legal review of all of that. That will all be coming from reserves and our legal budget reserve. This year under asset management, we did a lot of great work this year. Kudos to the asset management team and to the water wastewater teams. We did a lot of work on manhole, I know it sounds exciting, manhole locations and mapping our linear assets for water and wastewater. This year we'll be looking at going up, so looking at the vertical assets associated with water, wastewater. Those are buildings, lift stations, all of those types of things. We've had some money in the budget for years in the capital budget. Council had set aside $300,000 of your very early on gas tax money to buy an asset management system. So we initially thought, okay, we're going to go out and buy a system and then we'll fill it with information. We've actually taken an opposite approach. We've got the information. Now we're going to go out and find the system that's going to help us manage it all, because now we know what kind of information we actually have and need. So this year, we'll be looking at that solution, planning for it. We don't intend to buy it this year, but we'll be doing the planning around the needs assessments, what all the different departments need, what do we need that system to do for us. So that'll be a full organizational engagement to make sure we get that one right. And then next year, we'll be coming to council looking to procure some sort of asset management system using that $300,000 that you set aside years ago. It's probably more like $325,000 or $30,000 now that you set aside to do this project. The other big project coming out of the real estate and corporate project side of corporate services is we are updating our climate action plan. I met with staff the other day. They've got a sort of a path forward. We've been meeting with a lot of our groups this will feed into our plan and preparing folks. In year 2 of that, we will be doing a climate risk assessment for the municipality. That will cost, it's in the budget at about $80,000, but there's also money anticipated that we'll get a 70 to 80% grant to cover that work. So if we don't, then we'll have to rethink how we get that risk assessment done. So that's corporate services. Their table is on page 41. And again, you'll see lots of ins and outs here. Primarily in this department, you're going to see lots of ins and outs of big dollars. for projects that were completed in 25-26 that are no longer in the budget. So for example, your professional services fees, they've gone up based on the climate plan risk assessment and the DAR land management by 187,000, but they've gone down by 143,000 because this year we had a non-residential market analysis, an EBD, a physical security audit for our buildings, and municipal property scoping from for the real estate side. So big jumps in those numbers, but they're all just projects that that you would have seen come and go out of your budget. The other thing in here, you will see there's an increase in computer support, and that increase in computer support, you'll see sort of a trickle effect throughout the organization because we allocate our computer support throughout the organization. We had a bit of a surprise when we renegotiate, or there's no negotiation with Microsoft, when we had to purchase our new Microsoft Exchange licenses. Those had a significant increase. Our Zoom licenses had an increase, and then our vSphere licenses as well. So we did work to get those reduced. We had some success on the Zoom side, but the Microsoft licenses altogether, all three of those things are an increase of $45,000 in your budget. We do have some money in reserve to cover sort of information technology stuff, but that is not being recommended to be brought in because these are expenses that you're going to see year over year. They're not a one-time expense. Excuse me. Again, if you look through your reserves in this cost center, some big dollars, but those were all to fund your projects that were in 25-26 or to fund projects that are coming up in 26-27. On to finance. So finance starts on page 42 to 49. So in your finance budget, funnily enough, finance are the ones that spend the least amount of money in the organization. The bigger variations to talk about in this budget are your PVSC costs have increased by $37,000. This is where you have the market review number for the whole organization. So for this year, there's an actual decrease in that number. So last year we had a number in there that was $116,000 higher than this year. This year's is $278,000. Last year it was $403,000, I believe. Computer support is increased by $5,800 related to ADP fees, but also some of that reallocation dollars that we talked about. And then your postage for tax bills is increased by $9,800. The big thing for this year in the finance department is going to be looking at a debt management policy and improved debt forecasting. So again, work that'll be done in-house, but it won't cost a consultant money per se, but it will be a significant project. As part of that project, we'll need to do sort of a really deep dive into some long-term capital planning, capital forecasting. So council will be asked during that process to sort of look at your priorities and figure out what our 10, 20-year forecasts look like for capital. It's probably been, I would say, 6 years since we've done a deep dive into our 10-year forecast. So hopefully we can get there this year and then have it so it's something that sort of just renews on an annual basis in a process for council. So again, finances table is on page 49. The salaries and benefits, again, here is a minus $62,000 variance. That's net of that $116,000 I talked about. So there, we are recognizing our finance staff. There will be some increases in increments and whatnot. In this department, there's a lot of new people, so increments will be more than typically in a for years, finance has had everybody at the top of their scale, but with some new people coming in, you'll see more increments in their budget over the next few years. And then, of course, once you offset that with a $116,000 decrease in the market review for the whole organization, you're left with that variance of $62,000 to the negative. Everything else in their budget is fairly benign. Some small increases in and outs of, a couple of $1,000s here and there. So when we get to infrastructure and operations, you'll see this for the general tax rate. Starts at page 50. There's two sections to this budget. One is, sorry, Madam Chair, there's a question.
Oh, we'll just let Councillor Dixon go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, you had postage here back in the previous budget of 53,000. Is that direct billing save a lot of money on postage, or how does that affect it?
So through you,
I think we're looking at a postage for tax increase of 9.8 thousand.
Yep.
Just looking for clarification, please.
So we no longer have a e-post option for our tax and water bills.
Okay,
That went by the wayside last year. We were doing that through the PVSC system that they had in place. They were using it for their assessment bills as well. And the uptake just wasn't there through the Canada Post e-post. And I believe Canada Post dropped their e-post service. So we are stuck looking for something new. And with the changes that have been happening in our finance department, that hasn't been a priority because we didn't have a whole lot of uptake in people wanting their bills by mail. Now, having said that, that could have been because the Canada Post service was terrible.
you're right.
It wasn't user-friendly, but there's really not something out there that we know of right now. We have an SAP user group that will probably take that on at some point, but I don't think it's a priority for anybody at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. So infrastructure and operations is in two parts in your budget. When it comes to the tables at the back, because infrastructure and operations really does focus on your general tax rate and your utilities, both your sewer and your water, and then obviously your roads and your sidewalks and whatnot. So we do have lots of allocations of people in the I&O department, so it becomes very difficult. Like there might be one or two people that just go to one cost center, but quite often you have one person who's split between, the urban service rate, the general tax rate, and the water utility. So in here, this accounts for 28 total staff. 12 of them primarily go to the general tax rate, but not necessarily all of them go to the general tax rate. 7 are heavily allocated between the 3, and then we have 9 that are urban service rate water utility. In this budget, we do have 3 new positions. One is a business analyst. You'll see on the budget for I&O, when you take the whole budget together, this department is responsible for most of our spending, most of our contracts, and some really big contracts that need lots of attention paid to them. So we do have a position in the budget for a business analyst to make sure that the engineers and the operations folks have the support that they need on a finance side to make sure that they're all in order. That person will also be supporting our environmental program in data and analytics, and will be supporting the engineers on their capital projects and budget management for those capital projects. We also have a position that council has already approved, which is a new supervisor in our water utility. And if council will recall, that is to divide. Right now we have a supervisor of water distribution and treatment, and we will be having a supervisor of water treatment and a supervisor of water distribution. That will enable us to better manage the distribution, you'll see budget over expenditures this year for water distribution related to breaks. A lot of work being done with leak detection. All of that needs to be a focus of the water utility. And when you're responsible for both the treatment plant and the distribution, that's a lot for one person to have to manage. So that position has already been approved by council pre-budget, and I believe we're either recruiting right now for it or the recruitment's ready to go out to market. And then this one of the new positions in this budget is also the part-time shared communications person that will be supporting INO through solid waste education, but also through some of the programs that they have related to our environment programs, as far as community engagement and specifically education on things like water conservation and, think of those types of programs that we don't have much time to do now. Also through a restructuring, we've had one position eliminated in this department. I did some moving around of functions to make sure that we were using the dollars appropriately and that we could grow this department in a more sustainable way. So when you get into the discussions around infrastructure and operations this year, one of the big things in infrastructure and operations as far as dollar value is, of course, your waste management expenses. So when you get into your waste management expenses, you're talking about millions of dollars that we spend on both collections, processing, and transportation. When you get into this year, we've negotiated our circular materials contract, which is going to bring in a significant amount of revenue to the municipality because now we are being paid by circular materials to pick up, process, and transport the recycling.
Just going to let Councillor Mitchell
Okay.
speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the CAO. Priority 1 projects, one-time projects and new services. Will most of these projects be done with debt?
With debt?
Yeah, we have to borrow for those projects?
It depends on which the projects are. Solid waste does have a lot of reserves that you've been putting aside. And the circular materials money that's coming in, although you would think you would see a huge reduction in that, in your dwelling unit fee, this budget does show the significant difference in the revenue going to reserves because you do have some significant solid waste projects coming up. You've approved the C&D cell to be expanded. So we would recommend that instead of getting debt, because you don't have enough money to pay for that project, instead of going into debt to pay for that project, we'd recommend that you take that circular materials money, redirect it to your reserve, so at the time you'll have money to pay for that project. It would be fairly significant if you didn't.
Okay, thanks.
And depending on some of the other projects, when we get into the capital budget next Thursday, you will see each one of those projects is outlined in the capital budget with when the money is going to be spent and what the anticipated source of funding is based on how much money we have in reserves. And all of the assumptions from the draft operating budget have carried forward to that capital budget. So we are assuming you'll put money away in reserves to pay for that C&D cell. That is an assumption we've made. If that doesn't happen, then your capital budget will have to change and you'll have to incur debt. Then you'll have to increase your tax rate next year to cover your debt charges. So it just sort of cycles if it goes into debt. So if you'll recall last year, need my mouse. If you recall last year, sorry, I don't know how to get there. I'm just going to wing it. If you'll recall last year, your dwelling unit fee didn't cover everything. Your break even was higher than your dwelling unit fee. And you brought money in from reserves to cover the difference, to pay for your solid waste, knowing that this year you would have the money from the recycling to offset that. So the difference between what you are bringing in for circular materials and the amount that you took from reserves last year, I think it was 300 and some $1,000. The $400,000 difference is what we're recommending you put to reserve this year. Does that make sense to everyone? So $770,000, 300,000 of it was already coming from last year. So you had 440,000 left. That is the amount we're recommending you put into reserve this year. So that 770 is essentially gone. It's not contributing to your bottom line. Well, it is, but it's not something you have to work with because we're recommending you put that 400 and some $1,000 into reserve. Does that make sense? So we do have another slide right after this one with all the ins and outs of the solid waste, so we can talk a little bit more about that. We do have here just some differences on, or some notes on when all of our contracts expire. And ideally, once we sort of see through this first year of circular materials and how it's working, I think the intent is to try and line up some of those contracts. We are trying to negotiate a 1-year extension on the transportation contracts per council's direction. And we will, we'll be looking at an increase also in household hazardous waste. There is some money in this budget for the third household hazardous waste shred event that council approved be in the budget in 25-26. I would say the turnout in Rawdon was less than we expected, significantly less than we expected. And one of the questions that I had for the warden is, do we keep it in the budget or do we not? She requested that we keep the money in the budget, but maybe it happens some other way. And there are some suggestions on, so anyone can bring household hazardous waste to the Waste Management Center at any point in time. Maybe a suggestion that we could have a household, a shred event at the Waste Management Center as well. We do have an open house in June planned, sort of a touch-a-truck at the Waste Management Center where people can bring their kids and see a garbage truck and sort of do some of that outward engagement with folks, give them tours of the site, all that kind of thing. So if we coupled that with an extra shred event or something like that, we would, we'll work with the warden to see where council may want to go with that.
Go ahead, Warden.
Yes, thank you. Also, we've done it, I think, 2 years in Rawdon, and it does take some time for something to get some legs. But in the past, when we did this in the rural area, we did used to move to different communities too, and so that might be something we would want to look at trying as well. You know, maybe something in the Knoll area, or, you know, I don't, Maitland's a little closer to Georgefield, I guess, but, you know, somewhere, you know, try it, moving it around as we used to. But as the CAO has said, we can kind of try and figure that out as we go. But I didn't want to take the money out of the budget because I do think it's important for people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Warden. Next to speak is Councillor Rhino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I've been here almost 30-some years, and I never ever thought I'd see the day we'd have an open house at a dump. But here we
Waste
are,
Management
times have
Center.
changed. You can call it whatever you want. It's in District 5, it's called a dump. But anyway, I just, how times have changed, and now we're having an open house. It's just, it's hard to fathom something like this. But anyway, those are just my comments.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay.
Any others? So carrying on, under operations, still under the general tax rate, we do have the 2 flood mitigation studies that we talked about earlier. The total for those 2 studies are $125,000, and those would be funded from reserves. We do have a slight increase in our provincial roads transfer, so that's the transfer that we pay for the J-class roads to the province from your 1996 service exchange. And we do have a decrease in contracts, and a lot of that is was funded from reserves. So not a huge impact on your general tax rate, but an impact on these numbers and in the tables that you'll see. So we always have this slide in here just to show you sort of the costs related to your solid waste processing from year over year. Again, there's lots of ins and outs for these numbers. The one number that you'll see under recyclables processing is we are no longer responsible to pay for processing of recyclables. So there is still a small number in there for the groups that council has decided that they do want to process the recyclables, a small business that require it. So there's a little bit of money in there for that. But in general, that processing cost has decreased. And then, of course, we recoup the funds from the recycling from circular materials. And we also have a charge for them to use our waste management transfer station. So I think that's $95,000, if memory serves, to use the transfer station that we're charging them a fee for. So, again, lots of dollars in solid waste, but the total we anticipate to transfer to your reserves this year is $345,000. That's the number I was trying to pull from my head earlier. So this slide, again, we'll get into most of these next week in the capital budget. You can certainly ask any questions you want about these now. These are I&O projects that some of them relate specifically to I&O, some of them relate to services that I&O is providing to other departments. For example, the Mount Uniacke Business Park entrance improvements, one of our engineers is project managing that on behalf of corporate services, who sort of are the developer for those business parks. I'm going to skip through these. Like I said, most of them will be,
I'm just gonna,
Yep.
Councillor Perry, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to either the CAO or the director. Every year at budget, we go through these, and the public sees these things come into our budget cycle, and then timelines start coming into play. 2 years ago, we approved a phased approach for streetlights in the Mount Uniacke area, and we've had supplier issues and installer issues, and people heard about streetlights 2 years ago, and they're still not seeing a lot of them going in, right? So this timelining thing is really, because when we sit here and we talk about the Uniacke Park entrance improvements in this year's budget, would that project be completed by the end of this year? Because that's what the businesses want to know, because you know, they've had a bit of a rough go with some other service standards in there, comparing the two parks, and this entrance is really a very important thing. Just making sure that it's reasonable for them to expect that to be done in this year's work cycle.
So I'm going to make a general comment, and then I'll let Jesse comment on that particular project. When you see these in your capital budget, it's really important to note when the dollars are anticipated to be spent. So if you see a project that comes in, for example, your Brookside wastewater revitalization project is in this year's budget, 25-26, for design. So you would see that sort of a couple $100,000 is going to be spent this year, a couple $100,000 next, and then maybe 12 million in the year after. So that gives you an idea of when the money's going to be spent. Those are the things that finance uses to decide when we might need to borrow the money. But you're right, things change all the time. You know, we go out to market and we don't get the results we were looking for, or we have to double back and do something different. Funding doesn't come through. All of those things, our capital budget is heavily dependent on the success of all of those things. So, with respect to the streetlights, we have had with respect to the Uniac Business Park, I'm gonna let, Jesse talk about that project.
Go ahead, Jesse. Yep.
Through Madam Chair, for the Uniac Business Park, in particular, I can tell you the exact status is the design is nearing completion. It's in review with staff right now. The current detail is, and the discussion, which is, can it happen within this year or not, comes down to easement requirements for construction versus is there potential a sliver request for land acquisition, and it's unknown right now. And that's being reviewed in detail because it's a matter of feet difference that make a big difference in the timeline of the project. And that's to make sure there's the right turn radius. The construction, if things are good, that one would proceed, and it would be for one of the two entrances, and that's what staff would be proposing, and we were hoping to have an update for February executive to detail what was coming up. That didn't hit for February executive because we weren't ready, but there is approved budget for construction, and our intention will be to proceed. That is the plan, but it's all tied up in that detail, which the team hasn't been able to brief me of which direction is the next steps to be able to move forward, but it's progressing well. So it's anticipated for this year. The construction complexity it's a 1 year. It's a 1 year project. So the hopes is to go to market this spring.
I do know that there was some complexities with going through this upgrade. That's why I was just wanting to make sure, because I do get asked a lot because we talked about this project over a year ago and stuff, and there's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts. So I get the onus on staff. I just want to keep the expectations realistic for the public when they see these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Next to speak is Counselor Rhino.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, through you to, I would be Jesse on this one. The scale replacement, is that both your entrance and exit scales? And that'd be one question. And the other one, would it be due to aging? Would it be due to computer software outdated? What's the story behind that, if I may ask?
Through Madam Chair, it is one of the two scales. There's if you will, an old scale, new scale. They're both aged, but one is getting to the point where the replacements are becoming frequent and costly, and we're concerned of it not being functional. And so we're having more and more occurrences the last several years of having to shut down one scale and have an in and out and some traffic congestion happening around the scale house, but it is just the one.
So it would be the entrance one
It is,
or the exit one?
I believe it is the exit.
I think it's the exit one.
It's the exit.
It
was-
is the exit?
I believe so.
It was installed in 1998.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But you're sure it's the exit one? That's what I want to try to get at. No, one of the two is not good. If you're gonna ask for 130,000, you know, what you say you're gonna do this, you gotta know which scale it is. So that's one of my questions.
Is that it, Counselor?
Yeah.
Thank you. Counselor Tingley.
Through the chair to Jesse. Some of these projects are contingency on provincial funding. Do we go ahead with design even if the provincial funding is not confirmed?
So through Madam Chair, we proceed until there is confirmation that the funding has changed. And so if we have up to approved funding, we would proceed until.
So my question, I guess, is like for one of them, Brookside, we've just applied for the funding from the province. Do we not go through to the design until we receive confirmation?
No.
We don't go to his design?
No, we do go to design.
We go
That
design.
one will be built regardless.
Okay,
It'll be,
Yeah.
it's being designed now.
So, and through Madam Chair, we have a signed agreement with the federal government. We have approved budget from council. Our due diligence as staff are to seek out additional funding support, but proceed regardless.
okay.
Because it's for the greater good of the financial health of the municipality as a whole that we can find additional funding so that we can continue with additional work
Okay,
that
understood.
otherwise wouldn't be done because of the financial strain of this project, but it will go forward.
Okay, thanks.
Through you, Madam Chair, there are
Thank you.
some projects in here that are contingent on funding being received, and where that's the case, we make note of that.
Okay, next to speak is Counselor Musa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Jesse, now with the new roads in our business park, the municipal ones, are we looking at those turns? This way we don't have to go back and spend a lot of money to fix them? You know what I mean? Like, we learn from Highway 1, so I don't know about the inside road, but if we design it right when we first, this way we don't have to acquire any land from adjacent lands and stuff like that.
Through Madam Chair, I would suggest that all new designed and built roads would be required to meet today's standards. And that's what would be implemented in turn radius based on the up-to-date current functional state. Part of the challenge with the original concepts, it goes back when the municipality first designed business parks, it was not projecting out the industrial type of use that was attracted by it. And so that's why the turn radiuses weren't adequate, because it was anticipating smaller, different types of businesses than what were attracted and bought. And that's why we've gone back and retrofitted. We know the market now, and we would adjust appropriately.
Yeah, that's my point.
Yeah.
I think we should adjust, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Okay,
Through you, Madam Chair, I just want to confirm that the scale at the Waste Management Center is in fact the entry scale, although both, I believe, could be replaced.
It's the short one.
This one's the one that really needs to be replaced. So the old scale right now is the way that when you come in, but you could reverse that and have the other way, the way that you come in, and one could be the other. Entry, it's the entry scale. We're gonna go with that. Andrea just needs one. Okay, so again, next week, Jordan will be presenting the capital budget, and it'll have much more detail on each one of these as far as phasing and when the money's gonna be spent. Again, some further capital projects under priority 2. We do have Elmsdale Business Park Phase 7, which is essentially the Giasante land, along with working with our new neighbors on what that might look like from a layout of the part that they purchased on the Weaver property. Looking at sidewalks in Enfield for 5.2 million. That's a replacement of the very old sidewalks in that community. There's a cross culvert on Park Road, and again, that district meter area project around trying to use metering to isolate your water losses. And we've talked about the 2 non-capital flood studies. So those are sort of your general tax rate, capital projects for I&O. When you get into your urban service rate, and I should say the general tax rate table for variances is on page 72 in your document, 72 and 73. And again, there's a lot in here of sort of little bits that are in and out, because there's so many projects that happen in a department of this size that are funded from reserves. Each year has a number of different smaller projects that you'll see coming in and out. There. One of the big things that we've done in this budget is to increase the amount of money coming into reserves from your snow removal. So we've anticipated a higher budget for snow removal, but we've also brought in more money from reserves for it in case it doesn't happen. The worst thing you can do for snow removal is rate for snow removal that you're never going to do. So we do have healthy reserves in our snow removal, and that way we can anticipate that with increased roads, you're gonna have increased costs. But you all know that snow is very unpredictable, so we do use our reserves quite significantly when it comes to that budget.
Okay, I'm just going to get a question from Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just back to the CAO, back on page 64. The sidewalks, that would be coming out of the urban service rate for pay,
Yes,
not the
yes.
general tax rate?
Absolutely.
I'm just seeing it says net impact on general tax rate.
I know.
It's on that page, so I'm
Yeah.
just making sure.
It's, so this does say general tax rate, but most of these capital projects aren't related to the general tax rate. They're related to services. It's just that it's in your infrastructure and operations bucket, your.
Absolutely fine, thank you.
And we actually talked, I talked to someone in finance about next year not having to repeat all of these capital projects in this presentation, and then saving that focus for the capital budget, because it does kind of muddy the waters when you get into all these capital projects, but we'll take our cues from you folks. So when we get into the urban service rate, pages 74 and 75 are the variances for that. The biggest number to talk about really in the urban service rate is your wastewater management fee. So again, this is the fee that years ago was collected on your urban service rate. You've since transitioned it over to a cost per cubic meter. The rate per cubic meter is not changing in this budget, in this draft, but the amount that we anticipate goes through the meters is just because of the increase in the volume of people. So we're looking at a wastewater management fee revenue increase of about $60,000 in the urban service rate. So if you look at page 74, again, with this urban service rate, there is a lot that goes through here. Probably your biggest increase in expenses is the fire protection payment to the water utility. So that is something that the urban service rate pays to the water utility for public fire protection. And then you also have a significant amount in your utilities. So when you look at this system, the urban service rate, you're looking at things like, you know, your lift stations with massive pumps and massive power bills. You're looking at about $47,000 increases in your utilities for that system, and about 40,000 of that is water for the wastewater system. You also have last year, you're going to see a big number and a decrease in here for $300,000. We had money in this budget last year to complete some easements that are part of a capital projects, but you can't actually put them in your capital project, so those have been carried in this budget for the last couple of years, and now you'll see those decreasing. And the last piece in here, when you look at your reserves transfer, you know, the ins and outs for things that we've been doing related to debt, related to replacing sewer pumps. We have a major project to replace sewer pumps every year. But mostly, there's a $300,000 decrease in there for your Lance Lagoon desludging. And that's all part of that conversation that was had with council around phase 1, 2, and 3 of the Lance Lagoon, and getting that done. So that work has been done for phase 1. It's been complete, and I believe it was favorable to the municipality financially. So we'll have to relook at those numbers for phase 2 and 3 and bring those numbers back to council when we get there. So moving on to Parks, Recreation, and Culture. So I would say the Parks, Recreation, and Culture department is becoming somewhat like the INO department. Lots of projects, lots of different things that they're responsible for. You'll see in this budget, everything from parks to facilities, the sportsplex, the aquatic center, plus all of our outside buildings, plus all of this building and this complex. So when you look through their budget, again, we're gonna bring Scott in on Thursday night. He and Alana will present to you sort of the whole sportsplex piece. Alana's here tonight if you have any questions about what you see in these sheets. But we'll hit the highlights tonight, and the full conversation can happen on Thursday night. So a couple of things before I start here. You'll see lots of ins and outs, like large ins and outs when it comes to rent and contracts and whatnot, same as you did in INO. But you'll also see a few projects in here that we're hoping to start next year to increase your presence, along with your strategic plan of bringing more programming to your community. There's a lot in here that will do that. So first of all, we do have some sort of utility things that we need to talk about. The buildings and parks insurance, we're looking at about a $38,000 increase. Our minimum wage will increase from $6.50 an hour to $16.50 an hour, April 1, and then again to $17 an hour, October 1. For a department that has most of their employees as contract casual folks, this has a significant impact on the Parks, Recreation, and Culture budget. And you'll see that throughout under your casual wages. We're also looking at sort of extending hours for the Aquatic Center. So if you'll recall, before the flood happened, we were fully staffed and we were looking at extending programming. With the rebuilding of our staff, we're finally at a position where we can look at that extension of more Sunday afternoon and evening swim lessons, which I know lots of you get calls about the capacity of our swim lessons. So we intend to increase those availability this year. With that, of course, comes with extra staffing costs, extra operating costs for the building. We're also looking, as I mentioned earlier, at a recreation van for the summer. So that would entail leasing a van for the summer, turning it into basically a play box on wheels. We have our play boxes in all of our, not all of our, but most of our community spaces now. This would be sort of a pilot project to really bring some recreation programming across the municipality throughout the summer.
I'm just going to go to the warden.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. If we could back up to the minimum wage increase. And I guess I raise this fairly often, and I understand that in the recreation departments, we do have a lot of casual staff. But I also know that it's hard to find folks to fill some of these positions these days. And some of these folks are, are frontline people with the public that the public are interacting with and that. And I guess I'm just a little concerned that we're paying staff that we're only offering minimum wage when they could go to fast food restaurants or somewhere like that and get the same or more money with less responsibility, so to speak. And I guess I just would be remiss if I didn't say it concerns me, because I think if we want to attract the best casual employees that we can, I think that's something that we may have to look at going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, warden.
Through you, Madam Chair. We do have a few positions that get paid minimum wage, but not a lot. But we do tie our positions to minimum wage. So if we're paying $2 above minimum wage, then minimum wage goes up. Then we would also put those positions up to $2 above minimum wage. the new minimum wage. If we don't do that, then we end up competing with folks who are paying minimum wage. So I'm not going to say that nobody gets paid minimum wage, but it's very few. Most of our positions are tied depending on certifications and whatnot, you know, people who come back summer over summer generally get increases in increments based on how many summers they've been with us, that kind of thing. So I don't want to leave people with the impression we have everyone in our casual pool on minimum wage, but it is tied to that, so it does impact our numbers.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Rhino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Parks, Recreation, and Culture Director. The buildings. Quite some time ago, was approached to about Wi-Fi in the Dawsondale Park in the building there. I know you got back to me with, ways we could do this, but I'm wondering if that Wi-Fi is built into this budget somehow, some form.
Go ahead, Alana.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Warden, what we've done with the group, and I can confirm we've been working with them most recently, that it's actually tied into their tourism grant, that the Wi-Fi that was in in that particular building was tied to a community group, and we are providing funding for the group to have Wi-Fi for their point of sale for Dawson Dowell specifically.
So that there would be an increase then in what they get to cover this Wi-Fi?
They're through the warden, so they specifically will tie that cost into their tourism grant. So when it comes forward to council at the end of February is when tourism grant closes, the group is going to include that cost as part of their tourism grant. So we'll have that discussion then.
I guess the question I'm gonna ask is, why can't we just go ahead and put Wi-Fi in there without tying it back to a grant? That serves as an opening down the shore right through, and we're trying to build on tourism. It's in Burncoat Head, people go there, and it's just would make it so much easier, and I'm just wondering why we chose this way.
Adam?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair, to the counselor. So the grant process is probably the cleanest to have the need met. When you look at putting public Wi-Fi into a site that we own the building, but we don't operate it, there's some service level expectations and there's some technical pieces to it with terms of service if it's being used for a debit machine that we can't necessarily agree to. So there's a whole bunch of technical pieces and reasons in the background. So when staff kind of looked at that request and looked at the best way to achieve the objective, it was council has a grant program and it can feed through that. And then there's not a service level that we're establishing that we really don't operate at that site. We do from Parks and Recreation, from cutting the grass and so forth, but it's not, we don't operate in that building as well. So there's a lot of technical.
Yeah, I understand we
pieces
don't
behind
operate in it, but the thing is, it's a gateway to that whole shore, right down through there. It's a gateway to tourism, and it adds and adds and adds. And, we're trying to promote tourism there, and to me, I'm kind of questioning why the route. I understand what you've told me, but I do not necessarily agree with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So carrying on, also at the Sportsplex, there is a sports shop in the Sportsplex that we intend this year to operate as a sports shop for the facility. The municipality, this budget is drafted with the municipality running the shop, having some rentals for rollerblades and whatnot out of the shop in the summertime to increase our activity on the dry pad in the summertime, as well as doing skate sharpening. And I think with the consistency of how we intend to run it, your public will have better service with more consistent hours than we've had in the past. Along the same lines, with the clothing and apparel, I've talked to council before, sort of about that pride of place for people in East Hants. There is really nowhere or no one that sells East Hants clothing, like you can go and buy a Halifax sweatshirt at all the stores downtown. So this year I've asked, Alana if she'll run sort of a little pilot for me to see if people would be interested in East Hants brand clothing. I know when I wear mine out in public, I get lots of questions about where people can buy them. So if we have those for sale, primarily at our recreation facilities and our tourism facilities for this year, and then we'll see how it goes and bring a recommendation back to you if you want to keep doing that. So this $25,000 is to buy the inventory, and then there's related product sales on the other side of that. As far as the capital projects, there is a list of capital projects here, a lot around the Sportsplex again. We do have the playground and park development in Belnan, the Lakeland Regional Park Development, the Shubenacadie parking lot, lots of discussion on that this past fall. That project is well underway, and you should start to see some movement on that fairly soon. We do have work that continues on our active transportation routes, and this year we have a project in the budget to move the Burnt Coat Lighthouse. So we'll be applying for some funding for that, but that's one of those projects that if you don't get funding, you're probably going to have to do it anyway. Maybe not this year if you don't get funding, but it's a project that has to be done. And we'll engage council further on that as far as long-term plans for that park. The funding for some of these, council has already looked at the funding for the active transportation route, so that would be from that 214, where the new dentist office is going in behind. If council will recall, there was an easement that we talked about, back down to the river, and then that crossing over the river would be connected in by the developer, building the crossing over the river. And eventually you'll have a really great, connection between Lance and Elmsdale through active transportation, that I think is going to serve the community really well. I think there's lots of people who are pretty excited about that.
Okay, I'm just going to jump to a couple of counselors. Counselor Dixon.
Thank you. Through the chair, I guess 2 comments is the parking lot repairs. I think we have to reconsider parking lot area because we are a shortage. I know last several Saturdays, there's too many cars for the parking spots. Excuse me. And the second item, just watching the news the other evening on TV, Sackville Stadium is going to solar panels for heating or for lighting source. I wonder, is that something that maybe staff could over the next time to look into to see if that would be something that would be feasible for long range feasibility?
Yep.
Thank you.
Sorry, Deputy Warden. Next to speak is Counselor McPhee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wondering, I don't know if it's the CAO or one of the directors could answer, but I had an inquiry about the bridge right out here over the highway, about it getting plowed. I know it's a provincial bridge, but it is kind of part of the active trails on each side of it, but it wasn't plowed. And I know it's a provincial,
The sidewalk?
yes, the sidewalk part. So people were complaining about the snow on it. And I know it is something that we used, I say we, when I used to work with the department, we certainly cleaned off.
That would be a Jesse question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Through Madam Chair, so I did hear of that inquiry and I've asked the team to look into it, and it's the province isn't responsible for clearing snow and ice, and it gets to the what's safe and what isn't to push, and could it possibly go over onto oncoming cars on the 102? And so the conversation I've asked staff to look into is if there's conditions where it can't be cleared safely, is there signage that we could be putting up to notify people on either end before they traverse and are aware. I think that's the safe option. But the team is looking into it. I don't have a resolution at this point, but it was, staff did receive that inquiry and are looking into it.
Okay, thanks. I know it was cleared up until 2012.
Okay.
So,
Yikes.
when did they give up the responsibility? Because through the 80s, through the 90s, through 2000 up until 2012, the department cleared that. Just like they used to, we had an agreement with,
okay.
for the Elmsdale River Bridge too. Or the
I-
Nanaimo River Bridge, so.
I'm not not
just-
aware.
Yes, when you're speaking with them, if you could ask them when they gave up responsibility for that, because I don't think they can give up responsibility for something they did for all those years. But anyway,
Okay, thank you, Counselor.
Okay. And then continuing on our capital projects, so we do have some projects over at the Aquatic Center, the stormwater upgrades that council has set aside some provincial funding for. Splash pad alterations, so there's a few, there's one of the features that is not ideal, and there's a few safety concerns that we want to clean up on the splash pad. And then the back stairs, there's a open set of stairs there that would be much safer and much more, much less prone to flooding if they were enclosed. So that is part of the plan of putting some resiliency into that building. And then there's two projects, again, this is all in the capital budget, for this building around tying in our building automation systems for the old and the new parts, and then mechanical upgrades, for the building as well. So as far as Parks, Recreation, and Culture, I should say on page 102, you'll see the variance for that department. Again, you'll see that new revenue coming in from product sales. There's a lot going on at the Sportsplex that's tied in here. An increase of 32,000 for those aquatic lessons that we talked about. And then really, there's a big push on and a plan to have more programming at the Sportsplex. And I think you're seeing that already through, the building is being utilized much more for programming that's being put on by our staff. And other big things on your revenue side, again, the tenant revenue for this building. And then some of the decreases related to, for example, we did the boat launch in Walton last year, so that project has to come out of the budget. Increases in salaries in this department, $12,000. Again, your increments, your part-time or your full-time benefits, primarily related to full-time wages. Talked about most of these already. And again, the big one in here, one of the big ones is the equipment, or sorry, the power and heating fuel. A lot of that is related to the Sportsplex and the Aquatic Center. And you'll see, we do have in our climate change action plan, you're going to see projects related to doing energy assessments on our buildings. We've started to do some of them, looking at things like solar power and wind, and how can we reduce some of the expenses in our systems. The biggest areas you have for expenses that we need to control would be the Sportsplex for power, and then the lift stations in your waste management, and then your plants. So there's a project at the Sportsplex to replace all of the lighting. That will come with rebates from the province, hopefully, and it will make a significant difference in the annual operating expenditures for that building with a very short payback of a few years. So I think that's everything else there is pretty self-explanatory. If we move on to planning and development, again, they are on page 99 of your budget. Or sorry, they start on page 104. that slide's gotta be updated. So planning and development, you know, the big things coming out of planning and development this year, we do have an increase, for the building inspector, the building official, which council has already approved, and we've already gone out to market to hire. Partially funding that through the, Housing Accelerator Fund, in this year. We're also partially funding a new position for a planner, out of this year for, support on the comprehensive plan review. And there are two big studies that need to be done through half funding as well. That's the Mount Uniacke Service Feasibility Study that came out of your other study you did last year, and then the Grand Lake Horn Settlement Secondary Planning Strategy, which is sort of the area between the, well, Grand Lake and Horn Settlement, but for those of you who don't know, sort of behind the business park, this side of the 102, from here down to Enfield and Grand Lake. So those are the big studies. Again, we're also bringing dog control services are returning in-house once the contract with the SPCA is up. So there is $93,000 in this budget to get that all in order. We, with council's approval, have started doing that already. I know we've acquired the van and we've got some equipment in-house already. So those things are well underway. And the other thing in here you might be wondering about is around the purchase of a drone. So if you look at that project in your document on page 110, purchasing a drone is sort of the next step in a lot of our programs. The plan would be to use it for things like compliance, asset management, getting sort of roof and exterior condition inspections for municipal buildings and other infrastructure that we have, environmental monitoring to places that you can't easily get to by foot, or large areas that we need to cover. Post-disaster analysis for EMO will be one of the large uses. And then general aerial photography of municipal infrastructure. We can use that for our GIS system. We can use it for promotion. There's lots of times where we've gone out and hired a drone operator to get some of those images for us. So we hope that that's a piece of equipment that you'll support having in the budget this year.
Just going to go to Councillor Rhino.
Just point of clarification to the CAO. I saw a drone in here before under something else. There's only gonna be one drone that's would be shared, correct?
There's only one drone. I think you probably saw it at the very first of the slides where there was all the projects listed. This is the department that it would live in.
And that could be used for EMO purposes as well?
Absolutely.
Good,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay, next to speak is Councillor Mitchell.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question on the dog control services.
Yeah.
Is there a kennel service that we're using, or we're having our own kennels?
We do not have our own kennels. We have to contract kennel services for that.
You have some in mind, I hope.
John can answer that. We were looking.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we started looking a few months ago, and we did identify a provider in the Truro area, and so that facility's been inspected. I don't know that we've actually signed an agreement with them yet, but we do have something in the works.
That's the closest to,
Yeah, we put a call out, and that was, I don't think anyone in East Hants put a kennel for it.
I just see it's gonna be a lot of travel time, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay.
So, Madam Chair, the planning table of variances is at the page 118. No real surprises in those numbers, but again, there's some fairly large ones. The $293 increase in salaries and benefits is offset by the half money for the planner and the building official, as well as the increments for all of the other folks in that department, which include all of your building officials, your compliance folks, your planners, your development officers. Don't think I'm forgetting anybody. So those increases are primarily those two new positions which council has already approved. Again, the bigger numbers in here, the Mount Uniacke Servicing Feasibility Study, $300,000 for that study, and that will be sort of the baseline for can you service Mount Uniacke, how would it happen, what the cost would be, that type of thing. And then the Grand Lake Horn Settlement Planning Strategy is $140,000. We also have $45,000 increase in here for your dog control services themselves, and that would include your after hours, your like your sort of 2 or 3 deep, for on-call, that type of thing. So the dog control coming in-house is not for the faint of heart financially, but it is a necessary service that you have decided you will provide. So councillors, that's sort of the high level of what's in this budget that is different from the services we currently provide. New services, new projects, some pilot projects. All of these projects, when you look through the document, have a description of how they align with your strategic plan. And I would encourage you sort of to take a look through all of those and ask any questions that you might have as you, if you have any. You can reach out directly to the directors, or you can ask the questions in this budget meeting setting. That is the wrap up of the business plan presentation. We've still got about half an hour, so I can either answer more questions or stop sharing and we can get back to our agenda.
Okay, so first we're going to go to Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just another question on the dog control services. Do you suspect or envision that the number of licenses you sell will offset some of the costs for that service?
No.
I knew that, but I wanted to ask.
So if you
How
look,
close are we to getting 80% compliance, just for example?
I believe the last report we had, we were maybe 12% compliance as an estimate. We were looking at doing a lifetime
Yeah.
dog tag. So the budget does show a $6,000 increase, but it's not anywhere near, and that would be really sort of a bump when you move to the lifetime tags, and then you're gonna see that revenue drop to very little.
Any reason why people don't license?
Well, we don't really know. I mean, enforcement is one thing. A lot of people have their animals chipped now, so they can locate them, or they get located, they get found, they can read their chip. There was a whole report that we surmised why people don't get their dog tags done, but you know, it certainly does help us return their pets when they're lost. And now that the municipality is going to take over that responsibility again, I think it's going to be more important to make sure we can return their pets.
So the owner will cover the cost if their dog has to be returned?
There's certain
Of
costs that they
kennels.
would be responsible for if we incur costs. Yes, that's all through your dog control bylaw.
I was reading today that HRM is going to get stricter on the dog control, so.
Yeah,
Just
that's
my-
always a choice that councils have, so you can determine your level of service, you can determine how you operate your service, what level of compliance you're looking for versus, I guess, compassion. You know, and we really do look to council to tell us what level of service they want us to provide to the community.
Okay, thank you.
We'll hear from you if people aren't happy, I'm sure. So, Madam Chair, I think next on your agenda is the Human Resources Report.
Yes.
Okay. I'm just gonna unplug momentarily, Shirley, so I can. Should be 2 seconds.
Thank you.
You can put that in your binder.
But there's no tab.
There's no tab for it. You're gonna have to wing it. We'll make you some tabs if you want some. Okay. Okay, I'm ready, Shirley. Oh. Just a sec. Just a sec. There. So counselors, the annual HR report is on screen. I guess I would look for direction on whether you want me to go through this in detail or whether you want to get a high level and you can read it on your own. There's quite a bit of information in here. I can certainly run through and touch on the high points. Detail, okay.
Detail?
I'm happy with the high point.
Well, I'm not going to read it to you, I can assure you that. I'll hit the high points.
Perfect, thank you.
So we've talked a lot throughout the business plans on what you can expect this year. A lot of things that are in this budget, in this business plan are related to the use of your human resources on things that don't necessarily cost you money out of pocket, but do cost you a lot of time and energy. I always say time, energy, and effort. So you're going to see a lot of coordination on Remo this year, on the fire service review, and a lot on FOIPOP. FOIPOP has started to consume a great deal of our human resource time. We've had more FOIPOP applications in the last year than we've had in the 26 years I've been here, altogether. So I'm not sure where that trend is coming from, and I'm not sure if it's going to continue or not. There are changes that are coming to the FOIPOP Act, which I think are going to make them more prevalent. So I'm waiting for that. Now, the good news is that we have a value of openness and transparency where we can. So a lot of the FOIPOP requests that we get are actually just routine access to information, and we just send the people the information. There's no FOIPOP, it just goes through. But there are some that do have to go through the process for legal and other reasons, and those have consumed a great deal of time, energy, and effort this past year. And as we go through and sort of move to the next steps of the Sportsplex, of increasing your recreation programming, looking at your recreation studies related to places and things, and we've done the surveys, but there's still a whole study that has to be developed in-house for that. We look at the studies that have to be done for our future water utility growth, for our planning growth. All of those studies take an incredible amount of time, and that's where I see a lot of your senior leadership and manager time being spent this past year, and then as we continue to grow into future years.
Excuse me, CAO, I'm
Yeah.
just going to go to Councillor Perry for comment.
I just have a question, through you, Madam Chair, to the CAO. FOIPOP and Freedom of Information has been in the news recently at the federal level. And for the simple fact is they just redact everything and send blank forms back to people who ask for stuff. So there's no, like, do we have is there an overarching, if we, like, I believe in open and transparency and giving people the information, but for some of these requests that are border on the line of ridiculousness, is there a way you can just kind of like, is there a provincial organization that oversees it that would punish us in some way? Because, you know, staff time is more valuable than putting up with some of these very frivolous requests that come in.
Through you, Madam Chair, there is a Freedom of Information Oversight Department with the province. They cannot order council to do something. They can't order you to release certain information, but they can certainly tell you whether they think you should or not. And that's through an appeal process. So that is what has taken some of our time this year, is working through those appeal processes. People didn't like the information we gave them, or people didn't think we should have redacted something. They can appeal that to the Office of the Privacy Commissioner at the province. They then require us to send in all of the information we have unredacted on a certain topic. They will look at the information and determine whether it should have been released or not based on their opinion. And then it comes back to us. If I were to get an opinion, which I believe they're years behind, so you're not getting these opinions back. We haven't gotten any back yet. But if I were, I would look at it seriously and take their recommendation. If I felt strongly that it's not something that council would want me to release, then I would come to council and ask council what you wish. You know, I've got a fairly good beat on council, you know, sort of what you would probably want to be released or not. There would have been a reason I redacted things to start with, or chose not to give information to start with. So, but all of that takes thinking and back and forth and whatnot. Even just redacting everything takes time.
Yeah, it's
So, you know, one simple FOIPOP request can take, you know, 6 hours of Julianne's time, 4 hours of Adam's time, 3 of Alana's, 2 of mine. And by the time you've gotten all that time put into it, you don't even realize that you should have probably just said no, or charged the person for all the extra time. Because I think they get 2 or 3 hours of staff time, and then after we can charge them. But again, in the interest of openness and transparency, if we have the information and it's easy to get, then we will give it. We have done things like, you know, can we just have a conversation over the phone with you? Like, what are you trying to get the information for? Maybe we have it in a different way than you've asked for that's really easy. So we'll do all of that work around FOIPOP to try and avoid a FOIPOP if we can, because we're open and transparent government. But there, to answer your question, yes, there is a body that can tell you whether I've made a good or bad decision, but they can't order us to do.
Because
to release
what
that
I'm
information.
seeing, not just from our municipality, other municipalities too, these people are FOIPOPing thousands and thousands of documents and then just dumping them online to platforms like Reddit or this and that. They're not actually using the documents for anything. They're just using it to dump, and it's literally a waste of resources that could be better used to serve the public for legitimate requests, especially where there's no rules around really identifying yourself when you put a FOIPOP in. Like I said, I was watching committee today from Ottawa, and the Prime Minister's office doesn't respond to anything until there's a complaint going to the Privy Council. The Privy Council's office is responding directly from the Privacy Commissioner saying you haven't responded before they even move on anything. So it's really crazy to see how slow things are working at the upper levels of government, yet we're down here turning our wheels. It just seems like a very waste of time for the public, as well as the money in the municipality. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next to speak is Councillor Tingley.
Through the chair to the CAO, do you have a record of how much time is actually spent on FOIPOP? Because I know it's a wasted,
Not hour by hour, no.
should we be tracking that some kind of a way?
Well, we keep saying we should, but then you get halfway down another one and realize it's taking you another 15 hours, so,
But regardless of what it's taken, like I'd
we should be
record,
tracking it, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just a suggestion.
yeah.
Next to speak is Councillor Merriam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just, I guess, sort of kind of along those lines, I'm curious, when we look at the FOIPOP requests, you know, what percent would you guess that we would be charging people making those requests? You know, would it be close to, 5%, or, would it be a very small
It's
percentage?
a small percentage that we have charged to date.
Yes,
The application is a $5 application fee.
right.
That gets, I think, the first 3 hours. If it's a few more hours after that, we haven't charged. I think there's been some that we've said, we can do this, but it's gonna cost you X number of dollars, and the person's chosen not to go ahead with it.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a deterrent.
Sure.
Sometimes it's sort of a pushback and no, I deserve this information and I'm gonna,
I
get it.
I think, again, transparency of information is good, and, it's not to knock that, but, to Councillor Tingley's point, if we were tracking and if we found that the hours were adding up, and, I think, and again, I'm kind of touching on Councillor Perry's comments, for those that are frivolous, it could be a significant deterrent, I would think, because I think the per hour after the first 3 hours of staff time would be prohibitive, I think, in perhaps some of those cases.
I should note it, I think it's only $15 an hour you can charge
Oh, okay.
regardless of who the time
Oh, is that right? Yeah,
So-
very good.
So on FOIPOP, one of the reasons I put a position in our communications department to share with INO with solid waste education is because Julianne, our communications officer, is our primary FOIPOP officer as well. And we never anticipated that her role would be
Wow.
working this much on FOIPOP and not being able to get to some of those other priorities in your communication plan. So hopefully when we've already started to put some more rigor around FOIPOP. We've been in contact with Halifax. We've revamped our form just to make sure that we had some of the I's dotted and T's crossed. And then once we have more resources, we can focus on sort of making more of a FOIPOP program. So we have all those things in place that we know, okay, is it gonna be more than 5 hours? Yes, okay, this letter gets sent out to them. This is the process we follow to charge them, to track our time, and we haven't gotten all that stuff in place yet because we keep hoping that there won't be another one.
Right.
But
And then it comes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next to speak is Councillor Rhino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Following column along, Councillor Merriam's, do you categorize those FOIPOPs and could you give me some kind of percentage if you could? And are the origination of these FOIPOPs, are they within the municipality? How many come from outside the municipality? Can you give me some kind of an idea on that?
through you, Madam Chair, I'm not sure what you mean by categorize them.
You
Like
know,
frivolous
are they
and
around real
vexatious,
estate?
or-
Are they around? They're around bylaws. Are they around? You must be able to categorize because
I would
categorize
say, there's been a mix between bylaw enforcement complaints and files. Some are the press looking for information, on various topics that they're doing stories on. Some have been around our internal policies and, some have been around survey results. Yeah, there's been a mostly around things that we can't give out,
that
that
you
we
can
can't.
give out.
The ones that we've actually followed through a FOIPOP process. Other ones, when people request information, we generally just try and give it to them. Like if it's something that we have readily available, quite often it's stuff that we have linked to your council agendas that may need some context put around it, but someone can do that quite easily in a phone call with the person. So, we try and do them under general access if we can, without getting into the formal process.
So basically, we're giving the information and doing the legwork. Is basically, a lot of these, what I'm hearing is, could be done by themselves if they did an investigation.
If they knew
Could
where,
not?
if they knew where to look, yes.
Yeah, if they knew where to
Yeah.
look.
And sometimes that's all we do, is we just direct them and say, this is
And
all.
where were those, the majority of those coming from? They come from outside or inside the municipality?
You don't always know because there's no
Mm-hmm.
requirement to put an address and telephone number. You just get a name.
You
Quite
just-
often, we don't know who we're even dealing with.
You don't know.
No.
Is there any way that we can suggest to the province that maybe a name or come with that, like,
I've had that conversation through the legislative review that they're doing. We've had that conversation, and there is some reluctance to do that based on fear of retaliation, of looking for information and whatnot. So, but the whole premise of FOIPOP is there has to be an expectation that the public can see government information and see how the government works. So part of it is being able to do that without sharing who you are. Because there is some retaliation if, there has been retaliation with people who want information and, well, why do they want that and what are they gonna do with it? And when really the premise is that government information should be open unless there's a reason under the FOIPOP Act to have it closed.
I agree with you on the transparency thing, but, I'm trying to get at is, if we're spending X many of dollars getting this information from outside of the municipality of East Hants, how fair is that to the residents that are paying the bill? And that's what I'm kind of trying to get at.
I agree, but that's not what the legislation says we do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Anyone
Okay,
else?
go ahead.
So councillors, I do a little bit of a preamble on sort of our generations that we have in the workplace. There's some tables I'll get into on that. Looking this year at, again, incorporating the deputy CAO portfolio into our leadership team, that is one that I think is really important to me as we look at our long-term vision of the organization and my exit of the organization within the next 5 years. So if we look at the three things that we always look for, strive to be as an employer, we want to be an employer of choice. And I think you'll see our turnover rates are quite low compared to industry average. And that's because we're always looking to create that corporate culture that people feel a part of. We have a learning culture here. We value our work-life balance. We look at our mentoring and our coaching of our younger staff. We take that very seriously and looking for career opportunities from within. And I think you've seen that demonstrated over the last year, especially when you look at our finance department reorganization and the retirements that we had, all of those promotions that were done from within, and then we backfilled with external new folks. That is really the kind of organization that I want to build here, because I think that's really important for career growth. And it's really important for you as a council to have that continuity of people who want to work here for many years and who aren't just coming and going in the organization. So through your investment in staff, we also want to ensure that we have a decent compensation and fair benefits package. Through your market review work that we do each year, we try and keep those competitive and fair, while at the same time balancing the fairness to the taxpayer, that they're the ones that are paying the bill. And then what's also really important to me as CAO of this organization is making sure that we're continuously planning for the future of the organization. So you get some of that insight from me when I do my CIO priority session about where I see the organization going, what kind of things you need to be thinking about. And those are the kinds of things that the director group and I and the manager group and I will talk about as how do we plan for the future to make sure that we can be sustainable. So just looking at our human resource complement, we have 105 full-time equivalent staff. Of course, that took a significant jump when we brought on the Sportsplex. But we've also been adding positions the last few years to meet the growth that you're having in your communities. So if you look at, in a lot of these, this is full-time equivalent. You'll note in some of the tables below that we've actually taken some of the part-time dollars and turned them into full-time equivalents as part of that moving over the Sportsplex. And that's depicted in the payroll table. So if you look at the growth in some of your departments over the last 4 years, we've gone from just under 80 staff to 105. A lot of those are folks like in your finance department, you had approved more folks to help process more properties, more processing. Your planning and development, we've had some building officials, some planners, Parks, Rec and Culture, that's where you see the large increase from taking on the Sportsplex. Infrastructure and operations, primarily those have been in your roads team, and then in your water wastewater team, you've had some significant growth there. And the office of the CAO, I've been pretty stagnant for a while, but we did get half a position added to our admin support last year. Your corporate services, you're looking at folks, you know, we've looked at, we've hired an environmental officer, no, a climate sustainability officer. We've added a building, or sorry, starting to mumble my words, business development officer over the last couple of years. You've added your manager of public safety. So a lot of programs that you didn't even have 4 years ago, you now have with those additional staff folks. And really that's the conversations we've had over the years are, yes, it'd be great to have this program, but we have nobody to do it. So council has invested in those additional resources to run those programs. And I would say they're paying dividends for you with your taxpayers. We talk a little bit about our casual staff here. We have significant amount of casual staff at the Aquatic Center, about 84. We have 23 at the Sportsplex. We have 18 through our summer programs, and then our seasonal staff, we have about 24 seasonal workers in parks, recreation, and tourism. So we do have a little bit of some stats here. We have sort of changed our demographics over the last number of years. We've had a significant amount of retirements out of the organization. And when we look at our workforce now, you're starting to see a lot more folks in that sort of less than 5 year that are new in the organization, which was very different than you would have seen 5 years ago. And it's great. All the folks that we're hiring are really on point with municipal government and services. And I'm really seeing some new innovation coming into the organization by hiring new folks in. The average age of the municipal employees is 44 years old. Here we are here, demographics by age. So average age is 44, fairly evenly split, but as I mentioned, we're getting into that younger demographic. And then by generation, we always talk about our workforce in generations. So you'll start to see the boomers are starting to fade out. Us Gen Xers are fading away. And then we're being overtaken by the Gen Ys and the millennials. So not a bad thing at all. Just a different expectations of the workplace come with different generations, and that's something that we manage all the time. So at December 31st, 2025, we have 3 employees on staff who are already eligible to retire with an unreduced pension, who are still hanging on. We have 5 employees who will be eligible to retire within the next 3 years, and then 16 who are eligible in the next 10 years. 2 employees are working for the municipality as a second career after retirement, and they're not on our pension plan. And then we have 6 other employees who joined the municipality under the caveat that they could join either the defined benefit plan or the defined contribution plan, and they've chosen to join the defined contribution plan. So that information is really important because for me, it allows me to plan for the future and for succession planning. So that's what we use those statistics for. I'm not going to get into all the recruitment activity, only to say that we did 24 full-time or term recruitments in the last year, keeping in mind that we have 2 people in our HR department who do most of the heavy lifting there, and that doesn't include the 33 seasonal recruitments that were done. So We did add some capacity in HR for administrative support, and that is paying off now. Something that I'm very proud of is our retention rate. We have an 83% retention rate. That means that 83% of people who started here 2 years ago are still here. The two people who were hired in 2023 who left, one left to leave Nova Scotia, and then one took another job opportunity, and one who left to take another job opportunity actually returned. So that, I think, is a three-peat of people who have left here for greener pastures and then come back to the municipality. So I'll take that as a win.
CAO, I'd just like to say that I think that you are achieving what you were trying to accomplish in those numbers with creating the work culture that you were hoping to create. And on that note, we have reached our time of adjournment. If you want to just wrap
I'll
up
wrap it
wherever
up.
you see fit.
Okay. So again, there's lots of information here. I'm not going to go through all the recruitments, but you'll see all of the different recruitments that we've done. All of the change we've talked about in the departments, I'm not going to go through all of that. It's there for those of you who want to read it. These are all the things we worked on this year, the different types of training that we did this year. So proposals for 2026, 2027, I've been through all the new positions that are in the budget. I mentioned as we went through the business plan. This table in here is one that's important. Basically, it looks at our staffing levels last year, the market provision that we had in there for last year, the market provision we have for this year, new positions, and these are new full-time positions. The next line is new, and council has already approved, I think close to $200,000 of those new positions. The casual to full-time, those are dollars that were in your budget last year. They're just moving into the full-time bucket, which is what this table represents. We do have the 2026 market provisions of $277,000. Sorry, I should go back to this number here. The 393 is what was in your budget. The 239 is what I allocated out to market revisions. So we didn't actually spend the budget that you gave me for market revisions last year. This year, we're looking for 277,000. These salary increments are folks that aren't at the top of their scale, so that's across the organization. If you're at step 3 and your performance says that you should go to step 4, that's what that 119,000 is. And then for a total of $9.8 million in full-time staffing for 26-27. So, I mean, I don't have to tell you folks, your operations and your services run on your people. There's, that is your largest expense by far from an administrative point of view. And as we continue to see growth in our tax rate, as I said at the very first thing I said with this budget, you're not going to continue to see that growth if we don't deliver the services you need to see it. So in my mind, these are the resources we need to be able to deliver the services that you want. I've talked, I think, about all of these different projects this year, the big ones anyway. And as I said, you'll see a full look at the Sportsplex on Thursday. The big picture, I think when you look at your workforce, you're going to have to keep growing your services. I don't think you're going to have to keep growing the number of people at the same rate. Okay. The HR priorities are in the document, and there's a conclusion where I say how wonderful all the people who work here are and how extremely proud I am to be their CAO. And that is the HR report for 2026, 2027.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. We are having another budget meeting. The next budget meeting is Thursday night at 7 o'clock. And seeing nothing left on our agenda, the meeting is adjourned.